Well, awesome. Well, Dr. Amy, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's good to see you. And so for anyone that doesn't know you, if you could just give your intro and background
Sure.
and kind of what you do.
So I like to tell people I am the doc that I see all the weird stuff. So my background is heavy metals, chronic infections, um, parasites, things that maybe other conventional docs don't want to touch. Now, I started, I guess you deem me as functional medicine, back when I got sick. And of course, my story goes way back to when I was little. But what really made me kind of change and start diving into things myself and start looking at things was when I had my first child. So when I had Landon, when I was pregnant, I started kind of investigating, what makeup was I wearing? What chemicals was I putting on my body? Because I was totally aware that things from our environment can affect me, but I was also now I was carrying something else or somebody else that I had to worry about. And so what I realized, it was a huge wake-up call for me, was after Landon was born. I had lots of friends that had babies around the same time, and I'm watching their kids hit milestones, start speaking, start walking, and I'm watching Landon, kind of still sitting by himself, not really doing anything, and wondering what's going on. Mm-hmm. So, I went, as a parent, you freak out and you wonder what's going on. So I went to kind of the conventional route. We took him to a pediatrician who said, well, he needs to go to a specialist. We don't really know what's going on with him because, he wasn't speaking. He wasn't walking the way that he should. We even found out that, he used to sit in this like little W pattern when he was sitting on the ground playing. And I had no idea that that was actually a sign of a nervous system detriment. These are all things that I learned as I was going through it. So long story short, we went to a bunch of specialists. And we were told like, well, we don't really know what's going on, but we can at least label him with apraxia. So what apraxia is he could understand everything you were saying to him. He just couldn't verbally respond back. So there was a disconnect between his brain and his mouth, the motor portion for him. We started speech therapy. We started occupational therapy. And I remember walking into my office one day, just being so frustrated, kind of down, this is my child. We're not seeing things improve. What's going on? And I immediately walked to my back room and said, okay, I'm going to treat him like he's one of my patients. So what I did was I did a heavy metal test on him when he was 18 months. And what came back was he was off the charts with mercury. So he wasn't vaccinated. He didn't eat any fish. Where did he get this? Well, found out he got it from me. So I had 8 silver fillings in my mouth when I was pregnant with him. And if you know anything about amalgams and silver fillings, they're actually more than 50% mercury. So I had actually passed this down to him. And there's plenty of studies now going back and looking and kind of digging in, realizing that this has been known for a really long time. It's just we don't acknowledge it. So I had passed down heavy metals to my child that was then affecting his brain, affecting his development. And so, I already knew exactly what I needed to do. I needed to detox. And I know that detox kind of gets thrown out there as this it's a super broad term. It could be anything, from a juice cleanse to what I actually do is get into cells and pull out these hidden infections, heavy metals, things like that. So I started him on, my own protocol. And back then there was no this is how you do it. There is not a whole lot of guidance, even as a practitioner, because back when I was going through it, I was also working on my own health. And I had found kind of a small group. There was about 50 of us, of different practitioners, all having our own sort of health craziness. And we realized that, hey, nobody else is going to do this for us. We need to start investigating ourselves. So, being part of that group and kind of learning from each other and going through it myself, I ended up putting my 2-year-old at the time through a heavy metal detox. And it was great, because what I realized was every time he went and he did speech therapy, when he was on what I deem around, his speech therapist noticed a difference in him. His, preschool teacher could tell me, oh, Landon did great today. He was interacting, he was talking, which is, as a parent, right? Like, you're like, oh, finally, like we finally get a win. And one of my goals for him was to make sure that he got to kindergarten on time, because they basically told us, like, he's probably going to be 2-3 years behind no matter what. Like, he'll never really reach that. And he went to kindergarten on time, and he got to be with his peers. And, it's something that we still work on with him today. But moral of the story is, a lot of times we have symptoms, or we have these things going on with ourselves. We go to a conventional doc, and they just either say, oh yeah, there's definitely something wrong, but we don't know what it is, so sorry. Or, hey, oh no, everything's normal. This is totally normal. He probably would have gotten labeled autistic, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it was more of a, hey, nobody bothered to look at what was really going on with him.
Wow.
So
that's
just a piece of my story.
Yeah. I mean, I can see why that would inspire you to dig so deep. And this is basically, the way you just put that is like why I started talking to people like you and doing the podcast, is because there's so many people that have been let down by the conventional system, where they want you to take a pill or just take this drug, or we don't know, it's incurable or unsolvable and no one knows the answer. And people get sick and tired like you, and they just want to do their own research, or find an outlet, or find somebody else somewhere outside the system that knows the answer. And I know you touched on it a little bit, but like, what would you say like the main differences between like the functional the functional medicine side compared to conventional?
Well, functional is all about literally the function of the body. So going and looking to see what pathways are dysfunctional, getting down to root causes, what actually caused you to have these symptoms, so that you can go back and fix it. Versus conventional, like you mentioned, it's like, oh, well, you now have high cholesterol, so let's get you on Lipitor. Or you now have this, so here's this. But they never actually address, well, how did you get there in the first place? And I do feel like, and I see it in practice, right? People are now starting to say, all right, I'm done with this. I'm done being told that there's nothing I can do about it. I'm done not having any answers. So many times people come in with their blood work, and they're told their blood work is normal, yet they still have symptoms. And so they want a second opinion. They just want to say, hey, can you at least give me any sort of insight as to why I would be feeling like this? Tell me I'm not crazy. And often that's honestly the first conversation I have with people is like, you need to realize, give yourself some grace. You don't know what you don't know. And part of this healing journey for you is going to be learning about what's going on with your body so that you can fix it.
And on why is the conventional side that way? Does that have to do with the education that does, like, they're just taught? So
yes.
Okay.
Big Pharma pays medical schools to, it's true. They get several hundred hours of pharmacology, and it's literally just to learn this drug does this, you prescribe this with this, versus actually getting to function of the body, or, gut, how things work, versus just like, oh, if this comes in, this is what you do. My background as a chiropractor, I started as a chiropractor. So I was already outside of the box, because most chiropractors are outside of the box in general. But even more so, getting sick myself, I realized, because I saw it from both sides, that there's just, sometimes you need to take the reins yourself and start investigating and looking at other options, because otherwise you're just going to be told like the same three things. I could almost like textbook know what somebody's going to come in with when I see their blood work, and I'm going to know what their MD told them. You know, here's your options. You can do this, this, this. You can be on, you know, Levoxyl. You could be on thyroid support for the rest of your life, but they never address that. Oh, you had antibodies. And a lot of people are like, what do you mean I have autoimmune disease? That nobody ever told me that. And again, it's sometimes, and it's not to the fault necessarily of conventional medicine. That's what they learn. And so they don't learn to think outside the box. They're kind of taught like, hey, this is what it is. You stay within these guidelines, and they don't know what to do if something's outside of it.
And I know we're going to touch on, well, maybe I'll hold off on the nutrition thing for a second. But I spoke to someone recently who has created a supplement or drug for, it helps with obesity and type 2 and high cholesterol. The amount of nonsense that goes into getting that out to the market, he also mentioned to me, which scared the crap out of me, was that because it's a low cost like thing that he could sell like over the counter, it's possible that like big pharma companies will buy them out and then put the drug not on the shelves, just like shelve it, so it'll never see the light of day because it's competing with other drugs
exactly
that are making more money, even though they're possibly, you know, less equipped to help people. So to me, that's evil.
Well,
I
so
don't see it any other way.
Experienced that. I've experienced that in my office in terms of years ago. DMSA was pulled off the shelf. And that was one of the things way back when, like 10, 12-ish years ago, what we were using in terms of heavy metal detox to actually get inside cells and, you know, pull out heavy metals. Well, FDA came in, some pharmaceutical companies said that they wanted to possibly make a drug from it, label it. So what they do is if it's a supplement, they'll pull it off the market. And then, you know, pharmaceutical company can choose to do trials on it. They can make, you know, their own version. And that's exactly what happened with DMSA. And I don't know if I should say this, but I had to find out a workaround. So I ended up finding a super clean source outside of the US where it was still legal, and honestly ship it in. It might take a month or two to get it, but at least I know I'm getting a legitimate thing. But yeah, that happens unfortunately all the time. And I think what you're going to see with people moving towards functional medicine or natural medicine, and people are really starting to investigate things for themselves and realizing, oh, if I, you know, take these B vitamins, or I do this supplement, or I do, you know, liver, whatever, pharmaceutical companies are paying attention. They're going to see that and they're going to, oh, there's money in that. So what could we do to get a piece of that? And that's where you see things like NMN getting pulled because a pharmaceutical company decides we're going to make a drug out of it, or we at least want to do trials on it. So there is, and I hate to say it, but there is some of that in the background playing a role. And you just have to be conscious of it.
And so how does something like that happen? Like, because I know that happened with NAC too, NAC, for a little while. Like, are they in cahoots with like the FDA, or like how does that?
You have to wonder because so a really good example is homeopathy is kind of under attack right now, where FDA is they're saying it's, you know, controlled substance. They need to control it. You shouldn't be able to buy it on the shelf. You shouldn't be able to do it yourself.
And what is that?
And homeopathy.
Yeah.
So, you know, different forms. It's sort of like supplements, but it's a very specific thing, different protocols. And as an office, and even some of my patients, when we heard about that, you know, we're writing letters to senators and you know, people that are supposed to be for us, and you know, we won't hear anything. Or like maybe a month ago, I got an email back for like, you know, a very general email saying, oh, we appreciate you contacting us. We have full faith in the FDA that they're going to do the right thing in terms of labeling supplements or labeling homeopathy. And it's kind of scary because once you lose that, the likelihood of ever getting that back is very low. And then you lose your ability to, you know, if you would choose to do something for yourself, if you don't even have that option, things that could help you that maybe aren't going to give you side effects or aren't going to have crazy side effects, like maybe some of the pharmaceutical drugs, which getting back to your, type 2 diabetes and weight loss and, the hot topic right now is like Wegovy and some of these other weight loss drugs, which, it's going to help people lose weight. But they actually did a study and they found that once people went off these drugs, which are super expensive, by the way, they're like $1,400 a month, 2/3 of people gained the weight right back. And it's because they never addressed what the root issues were. They didn't necessarily change lifestyle. And all it was a Band-Aid that made them feel good for a little bit. And I get it. People want to see quick change. But if you don't fix the underlying factors, it's just going to happen. It's going to come back. It's going to rebound.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone, it seems like today is people are just looking for like a magic pill. And most people, I feel like, know the answers. Like, you're not eating the way you're supposed to. I believe that you probably know that, right? And you just want to continue to do so. And then just add something to the mix that's going to, alleviate those symptoms or consequences, I guess, of eating that way.
But I do feel like people need to really kind of appreciate themselves and appreciate, like, it's okay to be where you are right now, but realize there are things that you could do. And people do, they get stuck and they feel like there's nothing else they can do. So they're going to go the easiest route. But it's only going to get you so far. Yeah,
100%. So as we're on like diet, I read somewhere recently, I think it's 72% of people in the US are obese or overweight.
Yes, it's scary.
That is crazy. A friend of mine actually went to the doctor and he's obese, and the doctor basically just told him he's like everybody else in America. So it's like up to you to change that, but you just look like an average guy that comes in my office. I thought
it's
pretty brutal.
So scary. And it comes down to what we're eating, our diet, our environment, it all plays a role. Even just from my background, from functional medicine, from dealing with environmental toxins, it comes down to, like, obviously what we're eating, what we're thinking, negative thoughts play a role in our cells and how we respond to our environment. And, you go back and you see pictures, right? I'm sure you're on Instagram and you see pictures of like the 1940s, the 1960s, surfers, everybody's out on the beach. And,
They look good.
Yeah.
They look really good.
And they're probably not in the gym, every day killing themselves. They're just out enjoying life. And so you have to wonder, well, what happened? What happened between then and now that now we all look like this? And it's our food. It's like modified food is really kind of like the start of it. But then we get addicted to it. It's meant to be addictive. So part of it is like emotional eating, as well as literally the bad guys in our gut crave it. So we go get it. It's easily accessible. They make it super cheap, right? It's hard to go out and spend $20 on a grass-fed steak for one meal. And there are ways to eat clean. There are ways to get cleaner meat in terms of, waiting to buy when it's on sale, freezing it, finding local farmers. Honestly, going back to the way it used to be, like, technology is great. It's awesome, right? But when it comes to our human body, and we do so much better with nature and following kind of a less is more approach, I guess you could say.
Right. All of this stuff, it's interesting. It seems like we're so far removed from, I guess, what would be ancestrally appropriate for how we behave, to how we eat, and how we interact with each other. We've got these brains that are, I guess hundreds of thousands of years old, but we've built a society that is that is brand new, and we're having a lot of complications with that. So as far as like diets go, I was interested to know, like, is there any kind of diets that you don't recommend at all? Or is everybody like,
Super sugar, eat ice cream every day. Like, I
okay,
wouldn't do
all
that.
right.
But in general, I'm a firm believer that there's probably some sort of guidelines that we need to stay within. And everybody within those guidelines might be a little different. So for example, like carnivore is great. Most people, if they've healed their gut and they've got good gut bacteria, they do really well, high protein. Some people do great with keto. It's not sustainable for like super long term, but you can use it as kind of a intermittent diet, kind of rotating through different things. Honestly, I think it comes back to being simple. So stay away from things that are genetically modified. Keep your meats as clean as possible, right? No growth hormone, no antibiotics. We're now starting to learn, although I've always had this feeling that, you want Goldilocks with everything. You don't want to be too little. You don't want to be too much, but superfoods. So like things that are high in oxalates. So all of these, nut butters, we're drinking almond milk, oat milk. We're having, 3 pounds of spinach a day. And then all of a sudden our joints are aching. Realizing that there has to be some sort of balance. And often, as long as you stay within some guidelines, but most people are going to do well, leaner meats, clean meats, some vegetables, some fruit, and just depending on how your gut is, it's because it can be individual. You get to choose because you'll know what sits right with you and what doesn't. Like if you're bloating after eating, that's not a good sign.
Right. Yeah. Okay. 100% on board with that. And you mentioned so keto not being like maybe for the long term. You put carnivore under that category as well?
That's a great question. I honestly don't know yet because I feel like we haven't been on it long enough, seen enough people on it long enough. And when I think long term, I'm thinking years,
Yeah.
right? But my gut tells me that that's maybe how we were supposed to eat. And then you pepper in maybe some fruit or other things along the way. But again, just seeing it in practice, seeing the people that are doing it and they're doing really well, most of them are probably going to stick with it and be okay.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I know the carnivore thing just seemed so bizarre, I guess, just a few years ago. I guess until I tried it and I was like, oh, holy smokes. Okay, these people aren't crazy. Maybe they're a little crazy. But what I'm seeing online a lot is so crazy. I'm sure you get a lot of this, is that having a diet to people, everyone thinks that they know something about diet. And a lot of these things are like ingrained in us, like some things that, like, I don't know, I'm not going to call anybody out that might watch this, but some things that people will say where they're like, oh, well, salt, well, you don't want too much salt, and like, where are they getting, we don't ask ourselves, like, why do we have this information that seems to be like programmed in us?
Well, it really is programmed in it. It goes back to, think when you're little and you're watching commercials and it's cereal and it's this and it's this. A lot of, I'll tell you, when patients come into the office, one of the first things I tell them is that whatever you've learned so far, just whatever you've been told or whatever you think is right, just go ahead and turn around and go the other way. So eggs were supposed to be bad for you. They're not bad for you. They're, in fact, one of the most nutritious things you could eat, right? And in balance in terms of fat and protein. I really think that it goes back to kind of maybe even this like renegade thinking of, oh, hold on, you told me it has to be this way, so let me investigate a little bit first and then decide what's right for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like you have to be a little bit curious, open-minded and have a little bit of not trusting authority in you.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're kind of screwed in the modern age. That the programming is too powerful.
That reminds me of years ago. I was part of a mastermind, and we were away at a meeting, and they bring in different speakers to speak to the group. And one of the speakers came in, and it was like this group that did personality tests, and they had us all take a personality test. And they're like, yeah, no surprise, everyone in here has like a healthy distrust for authority. Because like, right, all entrepreneurs tend to like, they're like, okay, I see it this way. How could I do it? How do I do it better? Or is there another way?
Yes, 100%. And that's totally me. Every job I've had, I'm like, within a week, I'm already like, well, why are we doing things this way? Like, didn't you guys see it? This is so much more efficient this way. It's gotten me in a lot of trouble. So one thing I was interested in, and it's like, I agree with what you set out with, like with diet, but nowhere else that I'm aware of in the animal kingdom, or like, no one else seems to be as picky or as like, oh, well, like this rabbit doesn't like to eat carrots, or you know what I'm saying? Like, why is this just like a human being thing, or do we see this? Why is this?
I believe, well, it's a little bit of innate, because animals won't eat another animal that's sick.
Interesting.
So, but also being human, we're going to overanalyze everything. And at least
right,
there's a little bit of personality too, where, if you're going to do something, it's kind of like how I am. I'm either going to like all or nothing. So I'm either going to do it all the way here, and I'm just going to follow it. Or I'm not going to do it at all. Or until I find out my way of doing things, then I'm going to do it my way.
Right. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. We haven't touched on seed oils, which is big topic.
Yes.
Right?
So seed oils,
and where do they come from?
So seed oils are like broad spectrum vegetable oils. So like sunflower oil, soybean oil, different seed oils. And what they really are is they're polyunsaturated fatty acids. They create inflammation in the cells. And, they're being touted, and I totally believe this. This makes sense, that these seed oils are more inflammatory and do more damage long-term than sugar. Wow. Sugar tends to be short-term inflammatory response over within 24, 48 hours, where these bad fats are, we used to think it was 120 days. Some people are saying 7 years. It inflames the body for that long. So, this is where it gets hard in terms of, we had talked about it before, like if you want to go out to eat at a restaurant, knowing what they're cooking their food in, it's likely vegetable oil. Asking, hey, could you cook my chicken, my steak in butter, beef tallow? Most of the time, if it's a decent restaurant, they will be able to accommodate that. Obviously, if you're going to like fast food, which really you shouldn't be fast food anyways, but they're totally cooking their stuff in these bad oils, which goes back to, in terms of like environment, like inflaming our cells, it messes with our hormones. It makes us fat. It really does, because your body has to do something with these inflammatory things. And so we set ourselves up for harder to lose weight. We'll get brain fog. We won't feel that good. We'll all of a sudden start building up a ton of abdominal fat. And it does come from these, everyday little exposures that add up.
The scary thing is, like, once you start looking for these things,
They're everywhere.
Once you're aware, you're like, holy smokes, it's in everything.
Yes.
But it'll say heart healthy.
Well, yeah, think of what was that, Country Crock? when it came,
Yeah.
they made, their marketing was heart healthy, and all it was plastics and chemicals. It wasn't even real. It wasn't butter. It was straight up chemicals.
Why do
That would
these
in fact
companies
cause.
use that? Is it just because it's the cheapest
Well,
option?
no, in terms of seed oils,
Yeah,
just in general, why do people?
like
Yes,
in the restaurants.
it's cheaper, and it's because it's mass produced.
Mhm.
It won't change. Like major chain restaurants, things like that won't change until public changes. Like if you just don't go eat or you ask for a different option, that's really what kind of pushes, uh, things to change. If you can go to a local restaurant, again, most of the time they will be accommodating. And it's weird is one of my patients, so I don't eat at Buffalo Wild Wings, but one of my patients told me that they actually fry their chicken wings in beef tallow.
They do.
Yeah.
That's my that's what I consider my cheat meal on
Well, there
Carnival
you go.
is some buffalo wings. Yeah, from specifically Buffalo Wild Wings. So like with these, obviously, I guess it's going to take, like you said, people consistently annoying their waiter or waitress. Because like just not too long ago, there was gluten-free was like so bizarre.
Yep.
And people were like, "Oh, well, is this gluten-free? Is this gluten-free?" And then eventually you started seeing it at restaurants, and now it's pretty much at every restaurant. There's GF
Yep.
somewhere. I'm hoping that seed oil free or whatever is going to be.
Well, there's that app, Seed Oil Scout, I believe it's called.
Gotta get that. Okay.
I had downloaded, honestly, I think I downloaded it over a year ago. And the problem is you as a person have to go to a restaurant and ask them, hey, do you use this? And then you put in the app like, oh, they don't use seed oils, or this is seed oil free. So then a restaurant will get labeled safe. The problem with that is, I look all the time, like randomly, hey, is there anything around me? I just don't find a whole lot of options.
Yeah, I could see that. Is there, I've also heard that a lot of times olive oil is being cut with like soybean oil or canola oil, and they don't have to
Yes.
put it on the label, like the stuff you buy from the supermarket.
Yes, that's true. It's been going on forever. And that's why it's always been like, if you're gonna eat olive oil, like you need to buy it, you need to know the source where you're buying it from. I mean, it even happened, my husband went grocery shopping and I had avocado oil on the list, and he brings home. So I usually get like Primal Kitchen, something like that. And he brought home a different bottle and it said avocado oil on it. But when you turn it around, it's actually avocado, sunflower. It wasn't pure avocado oil. And he got duped by the marketing. He just assumed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know we have just a few minutes left. I was wondering, like what biohacks, if you could put it that way, like recently are like have you been into or incorporated in your life?
Well, I consistently, and I have for years, utilized light therapy. So that is, I personally use red light and near infrared. And the prices of light therapy units have come way down. So, like general public now has open access to this. But as a practitioner, we were using light therapy in our office 10-ish years now. But what light therapy does, just a real broad thing, is, near infrared and red light, what they do is it actually helps to increase cellular energy. So feed your mitochondria, literally an external source giving you energy. It also helps to decrease cellular inflammation. We utilize it. So I, in particular, utilize it at the office for patients that are autoimmune thyroid. So we've had it before where we draw blood and we'll see a number of antibodies, and we'll have a patient go through and do, a couple sessions of light therapy. It's usually like 1 to 2 times a week, at least. It really depends how often people can get in. But within 3 or 4 weeks, we'll redraw blood and we actually see a decrease in antibodies.
Well,
So it's a great
standing on, like, does the
so
light
yes, standing right in
on
front
that
of it
Okay.
to hit the thyroid. There's there's now helmets that you can get to directly do brain stuff, things in the nose, which they're all great. I think actually light therapy and sauna are probably the best in terms of value, like bang for your buck changes that you can get doing some of these biohacks. If your cold therapy is great. However, we know that if you really, really want to get the therapeutic side of what cold therapy is meant to be, you have to be getting in a controlled temperature tub versus just a cold shower. Now, a cold shower helps, but you're not getting necessarily like all the therapeutic benefits. That's probably going to be the next thing that comes down in price, right? With more people buying them and more technology coming out where you can, have it accessible at your house. But sauna, there's portable saunas, there's saunas you actually like get in. The biggest thing with those are low EMF is what you want to look for. You want to look for near infrared, far infrared, so full spectrum.
Okay.
If possible. But I would say those are probably some of the best ones that most people can get and use every day.
And as far as red light, is there anywhere like on your body you wouldn't want to put it, or it doesn't matter?
What was that? You wouldn't want to put it?
Yeah, for the red light.
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, we have some patients that use it everywhere.
Okay, gotcha. I'm thinking about testosterone production specifically.
Oh, yeah. Well, so there is a protocol where 10 minutes standing over the light once a day increases testosterone certain percentage. So, and again, it goes back to utilizing some of these external modalities. So obviously diet, other things play a role, but light, we've gotten so far away from light. Number one, the best thing to do is actually get out in sunlight. But if you aren't going to get sunlight, or maybe it's a cloudy day, or, you work in an office that has a ton of blue light, you have to balance it somehow. And utilizing light therapy, some of these devices is a way to do that.
And can you do what's a once a day, 20 minutes? Like if you owned one of these machines, like, is that okay? Okay.
Yep. So often, if somebody wants to do 20 minutes, it's fine to do 20 minutes all at once. Often people end up splitting it during the day. So like 10 minutes and 10 minutes, but it's honestly personal preference. And I'm sure once we learn some of these other things, right? In functional medicine, nothing is ever set in stone. So we are constantly learning. And so here's just a disclaimer. If you go to somebody and they are set in their ways and they don't acknowledge, maybe you might bring in some information that you've learned, or if they're not open or willing to kind of step back and see big picture and realize things are changing. We're learning things that I did 5-10 years ago. I don't do anymore in practice because we learned there's a better way, or maybe the body doesn't work the way that we thought and it's actually working this way. So this is what we have to do. But just being able to, be flexible and really just, again, be curious.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I love so much about you. Is like every time we talk, there's something new. I'm like, I can tell that you're researching and learning, and you really care about this stuff, and it's so refreshing. Versus when my experience anyway, gone to conventional medicine approach, and a doctor that finished learning in 1985 and hasn't learned anything since, and they tell you have IBS, and but they don't know. That's about it. So
yeah,
you can relax, or try this Walmart probiotic. Thanks for coming in. And you're like, that's it. That can't be it. Well,
yep,
I know
always learning.
Yeah. So I know we're at the you have a hard out. So where can people find you? I'll drop the links and everything in the show notes.
Yeah, it looks like I'm frozen, but
Okay, you're
Am I
still
frozen?
working on my end.
Okay. On
Okay.
my end, I look frozen. So my website is thedramy.com, DRAMY.com. My Instagram is the Dr. Amy, but all spelled out. So DOCTOR Amy. And I practice, like I do have an in-office practice in Raleigh, North Carolina, but I actually see a lot of patients online as well. So you can kind of just look up my stuff, and you're welcome to contact through one of the little buttons or shoot me an email. I'd be happy to help.
Very cool. Okay. Thank you so much for coming on today. This was
Yeah, thanks for having me.
all right, I'm gonna
We'll
stop
have
this.
to get into like pharma stuff even more like next time.
Oh yeah. I could talk to you for hours.